What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the ACC Betting Preview Part 1. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin Wilson. Today, we will cover UConn, independent school, and 8 ACC schools, Clemson, Miami, Louisville, SMU, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Duke. All the favorites in the conference. And then in Part 2, we'll cover Notre Dame. We didn't forget about you, Notre Dame fans. And the remaining 9 teams in the ACC, including some of the dregs. If you haven't listened already, everything's out already. All of the Group of 5. We recorded the Big 12 last night, so that should be out. SEC and Big 10 out as well. Make sure you check all of those out. Colin, we're recording this on, I don't even know what day it is. Today, Monday or Tuesday?
I think we're within 9 hours of wrapping our last pod, but yeah, we're at the end of the Power 4.
I've been looking at ACC stuff all night, so let's get right into it. By the way, Windy City Watch Party, Week 0, be there. Joe's on Weed Street in Chicago. Colin and I will be there. Producer Matt Mitchell, Breeze, Duck, Kerner, and Raybon will be doing a fun little fantasy draft thing, but mainly we're going to be there to sweat games, drink, hang out, meet some of y'all. 11 a.m. Central, Kansas State, Iowa State, and then we'll be there for all the games. So make sure to check it out. Joe's on Weed. We had an event there. March Madness was super cool. So looking forward to seeing some of you there that are in the Chicago area on the 23rd for Week 0. All right, let's knock out UConn first before we get into the top of the board in the ACC. UConn at one of the best year they've had in 20 years last year, and I believe they're looking for their first back-to-back winning seasons in 15 years. As a successful season for Jim Mora. They do lose a lot, specifically along the offensive line and on defense. Their defense was just ravaged by graduations and some portal exits. Offensively, the biggest concern is the offensive line. Lose 2 tackles to the NFL and a guard to the CFL. Pistol, outside zone, one of the heaviest outside zone offenses in the country. Got good backs, Bell at wide receiver. Are we going to do this Fagnano-Evers dance again? I mean, Fagnano's the 7th year. He's the better quarterback. Evers is like the more highly touted kid, but he just makes bad decisions. I don't know. Apparently, it's another competition. We'll see if they go back and forth. But UConn won 8 games in the regular season, 9 overall, beat a lame duck UNC team in a bowl. Win total sitting at 7.5. It hasn't moved in a while. It's pretty steady. I'm worried about this defense. They lose a ton. I thought Matt Brock did a tremendous job in his first year as defensive coordinator. They do a lot of really good stuff with their defensive line stunts. They change up coverages a ton. They're very unpredictable. Maybe there's some regression coming to. I mean, even though I like what they do, I mean, their third down D, their red zone D was outstanding. Maybe they take a step back, but they lose a ton of talent from the defense. So I have questions about the defense. The offensive line probably takes a big step back. The schedule, one of the 15 easiest in the country. So there's a lot of winnable games on the schedule. Like the easiest wins, like that they should, just put on the board: Central Connecticut, Ball State, FIU, and UAB. But there's some tricky games, like at Delaware. That'll be Delaware's first FBS matchup. It was an FBS team. At Buffalo, we both like Buffalo this year. At BC, at Rice, Air Force is going to be improved this year. They do play 2 option teams. Duke at home, at FAU to close out the year. We'll see where they stand by that point. I downgraded UConn some, mainly because of that offensive line and defense. I'm leaning under pretty hard here. I mean, I project closer to 7. So under 7.5 would be my look. But Mora's doing a great job here. And with limited resources, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of talent in. The recruiting class is never going to be that high. So what are you seeing with the Huskies?
Yeah, I'm exactly on 7.4. So this is going to be a no play for me. I would lean to the under, but this is also a head coach that has somehow shown up in a place where football was dead and somehow revived a program, stuck in a 3-3-5, and now all of a sudden they're, they finished up first. I'm sorry, take that back. They finished up 4th in third down defense last year. I mean, that's really impressive from this program. I think that they are a protege of what their head coach is. the schedule for me is really interesting. I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback, but Fagnano, I loved his numbers, 20-4, TD to INT, but he almost doubled having big time throws over turnover worthy plays, took over as starter at the end of the year. And I think the tackle thing worries me. I don't know what's going to happen when they get pressure on them. They were 13th in havoc allowed, so they were used to having a clean pocket all the time. But look at this schedule, like Central Connecticut State to start. I think you can survive that. And then you have Delaware 2 weeks later. I know you're back-to-back on the road, but it's not like it's big travel off of Syracuse. Ball State, Buffalo. Buffalo I've actually got as a coin toss. Ball State should be a big win there. And then, you're hosting FIU. Will it be cold in October by then for those kids coming up there? And I think it's a great spot against Boston College for maybe a potentially double-digit upset. Or at least it should be over a TD, because BC is right in the middle of ACC play, and UConn will be coming off of a bye. So, that if they have their offensive line set by the time they play that game, I think they could even have an upset over Boston College. And I love that UConn plays up to what their coach wants. And so I'm not fading them, but I do make it 7.4.
Yeah, I did. Tackles are a major problem. Which might wreck everything. So I think I'm probably going to be on the under here with UConn. All right, let's move on to the ACC. Clemson, the defending champs. Thank you. I had you last year to make the playoff and win the ACC, and I got lucky. I guess I should be thanking Syracuse for upsetting Miami, which allowed Clemson to sneak into the ACC championship game where they defeated SMU. Clemson, number one in returning production. Bring back a ton. Dabo even kind of flirted with the portal a bit, brought in more guys than, it's not a ton, but they brought in, they're still like a bottom 20 portal class, but, a guy like Will Helt where do you think Will Helt's from?
Purdue.
From Purdue, who I think he was one of their better players, but this Clemson team, they bring back a ton. One of the positions to watch is left guard, but the receivers are all back. Running back as well. She lost Maffa. Randall might be the guy there, the converted wide receiver. He played in the postseason as the running back, but running back, left guard. Otherwise, everyone's back. The tight end, maybe bringing school they lost, who was a pretty good player, but this is a stacked team. Klubnik, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last year. He played his best ball down the stretch, so Clemson is hoping that he carries that over into this year. Defensively, elite defensive line. One of the best in the country, led by Woods and Parker. People forget about Capehart too, but now you add Held. Linebacker, strong. Nickelback, worry about a little bit. There's some questions I have in the back end, see how that comes together. But they bring in Tom Allen to fix the run D, because the run D was a problem last year. They had just bad gap integrity. They would lose the edge a lot. So that's Allen's specialty. They allowed like 4.7 yards per carry last year. If Allen fixes that, then it's just how does the secondary come together? This is obviously one of the best teams in the ACC. You can go under 10. If you want to go under 10, even money at circa, or under 10.5, minus 140. So their win total is sitting right around 10.1. I'm not as high as everyone else on Clemson this year. Look, they had 9 regular season wins last year. 8 of the 12 teams they play this year are projected to have winning records. They only played 4 last year, and they could have been 0-4 in those games. Klubnik, he was great down the stretch, but against the SEC, the upper tier teams that Clemson played, he wasn't at his best. He's 0-3 versus the SEC. They averaged under 2 touchdowns per game. Lost at home to Louisville as well. They were dominated in that game. And then, against all the other teams, his numbers were gaudy. So can he take that next step against quality competition? What you could point to is late in the year, like Texas, who had a really good secondary. He did play extremely well. Schedule-wise, for this very experienced Clemson team, they do draw 4 of the top 6. They avoid Miami. And on the road in the ACC, they have Georgia Tech, UNC, Boston College, and Louisville. It's not a daunting schedule, but it's around top 30 from a difficulty perspective. They do start with LSU. That game will go a long way in determining their win total, in my opinion. And, if they host SMU, at Louisville, at South Carolina to close the year. So They're bookended by SEC teams around an ACC schedule. We're both low on South Carolina, but that game's on the road, so definitely won't be easy. We'll see what the Gamecocks look like by that point in the season. What are you seeing with Clemson this year? I project around 9.8, so not sure I'd get there, but small lean to the under.
Yeah, a revenge game against South Carolina after losing last year before they hit the playoff, or the ACC championship, and then went to the playoff. I love Clemson this year. I think it was one of the very first bets I put in the app. I think when you look at Cade Klubnik's numbers, it's been an impressive transition to an elite quarterback, something that we worried about 2 years ago. I'm happy to be sitting on a stack of like Bowman Chrome's autographed Cade Klubnik's serialized, because I think that he's going to break out here. 28 to 13 big time throws, a turnover worthy plays, lowered his turnover worthy play rate down to 2.3%. That is getting to elite levels. You're getting Antonio Williams back in the slot. You're getting Bryant Wesco out at wideout. We're looking at two guys that can do absolutely everything in the passing game at a national level, not just the ACC level. The weakness could be the running back with Phil Maffa moving on, but they like freshman Gideon Davidson so far in camp, and he's the 4-star. He was the feature back. That's what they're expecting. I'm a little nervous about him being a true freshman, see if he can handle the load. I don't think he's as big of a back as I would want to handle the entire load, so we'll see how he turns out. But you know how Clemson's offense is going to work. Garrett Riley can hit stuff over the middle. He can hit swinging, orbit guys in orbits. They can use every player on the field, and I expect more of Klubnik grasping Riley's playbook and it becoming more elite from an offensive perspective. When you look at the defense, there's not much more to add than what you said, other than I think Tom Allen is an upgrade. The fact that Dabo has had, I hate to use this pun, but some sort of come to Jesus thing about the transfer portal and hiring outside of the program, right? I mean, we've been taking assistants and elevating them through the Venables tree and all of that, and it just never worked out. And I think he became too good of friends with his assistants, and firing them was tough. And now you go out and you basically get a hitman as your defensive coordinator, a guy that's proven at other levels, even at Penn State. And you're getting 9 returning starters back. TJ Parker, 13 quarterback hits, 8.5 TFLs. Avian Terrell's a shutdown corner. He had 13 PBUs. I think this is a national level defense, and they finished 8th in Havoc, and I expect them to be even better on those numbers. I got them double-digit favorites over everyone in the ACC except a November 14th trip to Louisville. So the one bet on there that I think that you have to make on Clemson is they're still sitting plus 105 for the ACC. Like, I hit this plus 150 back in like March, as it should not be plus 150. They're going to be favored over everybody. The Louisville game they could even lose. Do you see Clemson falling into third in the ACC standings? I mean, there's no Miami on the schedule. I don't have any love for them.
Miami. Could they? I mean, they could lose. First of all, they could lose like 3. Last year they lost 3 games.
In ACC play?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, they could lose to LSU, they could lose to South Carolina, but in ACC play, like, they could certainly lose at Louisville. They were curb stomped last year at home by Louisville. Yeah. They could now. The trickiest games are in the beginning of the season. At Georgia Tech is not an easy game. We'll see what their new defensive coordinator can do. Texas safety coach comes over, take over as DC. Obviously, some familiarity with Klubnik after what happened last year, and then we don't know what UNC is going to be, but UNC coming off of a bye. Belichick, what has he got? We'll talk North Carolina, but those aren't easy games. And so there's and then SMU at home. I'm pretty low on SMU. At BC, can they trip up there? I don't know.
Have they named when the red bandana game is?
I
mean, that could be a spot.
Red bandana game 2025. I think that's SMU game.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the SMU game because it's usually later in the season. No, I can't get there plus 105. I might actually play. Their odds on favorite. They're minus 110 at some places. I might play no Clemson not to win it.
To not win the ACC.
Yep.
Oh man, this will be a juice. All right, I'm willing to hear who you think is going to win. I mean, they're not going to be an underdog. They're not going to be within 10 points of anybody except Louisville. Even if they lose that game, they can still make it. And they're not going to be an underdog to anybody in that game. So I can't wait to hear this.
We'll get there. This Clemson team could have lost to Pitt and their backup quarterback last year.
That was before Dabo knew there was a transfer portal and other DCs in the world.
We'll see. I think the love's gone a little bit too far on Clemson. All right, let's move on to SMU, the team Clemson beat in the ACC championship game. SMU coming off a college football playoff appearance. Jennings back at quarterback. His backup, Tyler Van Dyke, I believe, the well-traveled ex-Miami product. They lose a lot from some key positions, particularly at running back. They're going to really miss Rashad Smith at running back. They lost a couple of backups as well. They're going to need a redshirt freshman McFall to step up. Lose some talent at wide receiver. The big good news is Maryland. RJ Maryland is back at tight end. He's a player. He was hurt last year. He's one of the better ones when healthy in the country. What I'm really worried about, the offensive line. You lose, Osborne to the NFL as a 5-year starter. You lose your center. You bring in a couple transfers. There's still a lot of starts here, but it's a question for me. But the bigger question is the defense. The defense got absolutely ravaged. There's only 2 returning starters. The defensive line loses 4 to the NFL. That defensive line last year was dominant. Now you're bringing in some guys. Guess what? 2 from Purdue on the defensive line. But it's a big step back, in my opinion. Linebacker, you lose Wilson, Walker, you lose your nickelback Sanders. You add some transfers, but again, downgrade to me. In the secondary, your safeties are solid, but you lost McGill, you lost Crossley, one of your corners to the NFL. So, one of the cornerback spots I'm pretty worried about. So I think the secondary also takes a step back. So this defense in general, I think, is taking a step back. Last year, look, it was a tale of 2 seasons. After they made the quarterback change, Jennings really came in and the offense went to another level. Their schedule was very easy, though, last year. They only beat 5 teams with a winning record en route to an 11-1 regular season. One of those games, they won at Duke by 3 in overtime, even though they had 6 turnovers, which is pretty wild. This year, the schedule, again, it's pretty easy. They face all of the bottom 5. So, you're depending on where you have them, but they faced Wake and Cal on the road, BC on the road. You have Stanford at home, Syracuse at home. You also have East Texas A&M, Missouri State. What a weird spot on the road at new member Missouri State. Baylor at home. That's a good non-conference game. And then they're at TCU as well. So non-conference mixed bag. This year, though, they do play Clemson and Miami, which they did not do last year in the regular season. They host Miami. They go to Clemson. I want to fade this team. I'm at like 8.38 just because I think the defense takes a major step back. I'm not quite there from a numbers perspective. I was hoping to get a 9 and go under 9 here. The D also stayed so healthy last year, so there could be some regression in that department. So I'm not too high on SMU. I do not think they get back to the ACC championship game. I do not think they get back to the college football playoff. Lean under. What are you seeing with the Mustangs?
Well, when you have a strength of schedule of 74th, like you're hitting the schedule lottery 2 years in a row, your second year into the ACC, I don't know what the schedule is going to look like the next couple of years, but at some point you're going to have to start playing the beef of this conference, but it's not happening this year. And I think you have to ask, like, Kevin Jennings and his numbers, what you're hearing in camp right now is that he's changing his body. He's going to come in more healthy. He's being more of a locker room leader. He wants to be in command of this. I think that's either him being in his second year in the program or Tyler Van Dyke showing up and him knowing that he has to come to work with a lunch pail and kind of be blue collar for everybody. But, nearly all of Kevin Jennings' turnover-worthy plays, nearly all of them last year came against Duke, Clemson, and Penn State. When he faced the toughest secondaries on the schedule, he got 8 alive. And now he's losing, a couple of wide receiver options that he didn't have before. But tight end RJ Maryland is still there. There was an injury last year. I thought it would really throw a hurdle into SMU's season. Maybe that's the reason they weren't as potent, had some issues covering. Because RJ Maryland was such a big piece of that offense. They'll get him back. 2.7 yards per route run for a tight end is pretty insane. 117 offensive line starts and 2 portal starters from P4 schools, mainly Arkansas and OU. So I'm not really worried about the offensive line. And the running back room is just trying to figure out the depth chart here. But Derek McFall was named to the Doak Walker watch list. Now, he doesn't really have a lot of good numbers from experience, but he's already been named to Doak Walker watch list. So we'll see how that turns out. And you're right about the defense. There's a lot of questions here, but what there's not a question about is the safeties. Isaiah Nwakobia and Ahmad Moses, they might be the best combo at safety in the nation. Their edge, Isaiah Smith, powered a top 20 Havoc ranking. But other than that, there's just a lot of questions like Alex Kilgore, the linebacker. He had one of the higher tackling grades in the nation, but he can't defend in coverage. So from there on, there's questions all over the defense. But I go back to it. Strength of schedule, 74th, right? It is a little bit tougher than last year. You got to go to Clemson. You're hosting Miami, Louisville. You get a bye week before Syracuse and Louisville. But to me, this schedule screams they have a chance to get into that second slot again. The true number that I make SMU
spot against Louisville too. Louisville coming off that Clemson game.
So that's
and then they have Kentucky after.
I think we said that on the kickoff show, is that I've been trying to make a determination who I think is the number 2 team in the ACC. And I think it's between Louisville and SMU. And when you look at that Louisville SMU game, it is absolute dog shit spot for Louisville, who, is coming off their biggest game of the year on the week before, and will be playing Kentucky the following week on November 22nd before Thanksgiving, and SMU will be coming off of a bye. It is a major advantage for SMU in this scheduling that they got from the ACC. Like, throw the whole entire schedule out. If it comes down to the SMU Louisville game, that is a major advantage on paper for the Ponies. The number for me to make the ACC championship game is actually about plus 290. It's out there in the market at 340. So I think there's some meat on the bone on them to make it. But obviously, you're not worried about going to Boston College. You're not worried about Cal. And I'm just not worried about Miami in general. We'll get to that. But I think that SMU Louisville game determines it. And if you think you need to hedge out of that ticket, you can to make the ACC championship game. But I think I would ride with an ACC championship game plus 340. And then I would not pay attention to it till middle of November.
Well, we could not be, so far we are not be further from the same page on the ACC. I want no part of SMU or Clemson to win the ACC or SMU to make it to the ACC championship game. Let's move on to the aforementioned Miami Hurricanes, coming off of a 10-win season, 10-2 in the regular season, lost the bowl game where Ward sat out in the second half. The story of Miami this year, the story of last year is they really should have been in the college football playoff with that offense.
Yep.
Number 1 draft pick at quarterback, Damian Martinez at running back, an elite offensive line. They have their top 5 pass catchers. 1 went to Bama, 4 in the NFL. They had all the pieces. The offense was electric, but Mario let them down, and primarily the defense. The defense was a disaster, so they went out and they got a new defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. I think his scheme better fits this personnel, and there is a lot of change. They have good defensive ends for sure. That's probably the strength of this defense. They bring in Torrey from Rutgers to plug in a departing spot there, NFL departure, and Maui Noah. The defensive backfield is going to make or break this team. Look, the offense was so good last year. Ward's gone. All the receivers are gone. The offensive line's still going to be elite. They lost a left tackle to the NFL, but he was hurt last year. Bell got some starts. They lost a center, but they bring in Brockemeyer from TCU. The offensive line is going to be elite. It's Mario. He knows offensive lines. Can Fletcher be that guy at running back? Is Carson Beck healthy? That's another question. But with Carson Beck, with the downgrade in receivers, they brought in some guys in the portal, but it's definitely not as talented of a group. They want to be a more run-heavy offense. So can Fletcher be that guy? If you want to be a more run-heavy offense, that has to pair with a good defense. So the question is going to come down to how improved is this Miami defense? Can't be worse on the back end than last year. So they basically went out and they got a bunch of guys in the portal. The only one really coming back is Frederic, their corner, who was the only one who really played well, the only one who flashed as a freshman. He'll get one of the spots, and then they bring in a number of guys. Poyser from Jack State, Thomas from Tennessee, Lucas from Wisconsin. Just a number of guys in the portal. I like Poyser a lot, but we'll see how it all comes together. That's going to make or break this team because they're going to fall off on offense. They're not going to be as good. It's just a fact. can the defense and the running game make up for that fact? And then at the end of the day, can we trust Mario not to drop a game that they're supposed to win? I have a hard time doing that. From a scheduling perspective, they don't leave the state of Florida until November. So you got a humid edge, although 4 of the, 7 teams you play are from the state of Florida. You start off with Notre Dame, massive game for Miami's playoff hopes. Its win total, which...
And it's getting steamed for the Hurricanes.
We'll talk Notre Dame in part 2. Miami, best you can find out there to win the conference, plus 450. The win total, if you want to go over 9.5 at plus money or over 9 basically at even money. So the win total is like sitting right at 9. They have Florida and Notre Dame in the non-con, but both of them are at home. They have 8 home games in total. Their ACC road games are Vatech, Pitt, SMU, and Florida State. I think what's going to go a long way in determining this Miami schedule is like, what are Vatech and Florida State? Mm-hmm. And is Pitt still healthy at the end of the year? Because I already can see Miami needing to win one of those last 2 at Vatech, at Pitt. That cold road trip at the end of the year.
Yep.
And them dropping one of those games. So a lot of winnable games on this schedule. So they're pretty high floor with the talent that Mario is bringing in. But a couple tricky non-con games. There is no Clemson. They do host Louisville. They go to SMU, and then they have those 2 just like tricky conference games that Miami usually will drop one of them. I project 8.7. I kind of like some of the additions on defense. I do think their defense is going to be better. I know you're much lower on. Again, we don't agree on anything in the AC. You're much lower on Miami. You dropped them like 4 points. I think I dropped them a point from last year. So I'm pretty close to market. Don't trust them enough to back them from a future perspective. So it's a pass for me. What are you seeing with the Canes?
I don't trust them at all. I know Corey Heatherman's coming in, but this was a defense that was 92nd in tackle grading and 91st in defensive finishing drives. It just seems to be a common theme. Defensively, near dead last and allowing rush explosives. I mean, if we can fix that overnight or year to year, good luck. I mean, and the other thing that is a Cristobal team, and this is just consistent every year, 120th in penalties. I mean, it's just the way it goes with these guys. And it makes it hard for me to ever, this hype hits every single year. All these AP voters throwing Miami up in the top 10, and then the betting market starts to get shaded. Like, why in the world would you be hitting Miami right now against Notre Dame? I don't understand that, but we'll get there. The dip in PR over the summer, which I think got called out a couple times on Twitter, really just comes from experience. I mean, like, you're dropping from Cam Ward, and it just depends on, are you taking Carson Beck at his best, or are you taking Carson Beck at what he was last year? And I think you have to kind of assess, like, is this kid just a head case? Like, did he follow his girlfriend down to Miami? Yeah, and is he healthy, right? And is he not taking, can he get out from behind the camera and quit?
And can he lead the team? Is there going to be locker room issues like with at Miami?
Exactly. So, that's all a big question to me. I mean, look at the end of last season. Losses to Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Iowa State in the bowl, all by a combined 10 points. But their PR started shoveling downwards at the end of last year, and then the experience really got them down. So, I mean, that's how I got to where I am. And Carson Beck transfers in his worst year at Georgia, a turnover-worthy play rate that bumped from 2.3% up to 3.8%. And the Georgia offensive line kept him mostly clean. He only saw 70 passing attempts with pressure, and then he only completed 27 of those. He had a monster spike in turnover-worthy play rate when he had pressure. It went up to 9.4%. That is asinine. Now, the offensive line is fortified. Center James Brockermeyer comes in, long storied kid that went to, was recruited heavily out of Texas, went to Alabama, back into Texas, into TCU. He's going to take over here at center. Miami did finish top 25 in pass blocking. It is a Cristobal group, so I expect Beck to be protected. I expect him to be healthy, but are we going to return to the old numbers, or are you? I don't know. I don't know where the kid's head is at, so we'll see. But I do expect plenty of havoc out of the defense, of course. David Blake comes in from La Tech. He put up 12 pressures from the nose last year. I think that's a huge addition on defense. And defensive end Keem Mesidor at 10 combined TFLs and sacks. He's going to generate a lot of havoc. But the secondary has to improve on the tackling. That's on Corey Heatherman. And passing down success rate, 118th. You have got to stop people on 3rd and long. Miami just crumbled when teams got them into scoring position. I don't know if that's a culture thing. I don't know if that's a coaching thing. It's just consistent. Like there's just too much explosives allowed. There's too much, I don't know what the hell I'm doing when teams get into scoring position. And there's too many penalties. And Mario has cost anybody that's bet on the over on the win total year after year is shaking in their boots because of what Mario is going to do with the clock at the end of the game. So I'm well lower. Of course, I'm under 9.5 minus 148. I take an alt. But I think, I've kind of I haven't talked about Miami much because everyone saw the PR dip and wanted to know what the hell's going on. But that's how I got here. I barely got them making it to 8 wins.
All right, let's move on.
That Pitt spot. Can we talk about that?
The what?
Does Miami go up to Pitt after Thanksgiving? Like they're going to go up to Virginia Tech, right? We don't know what the weather in Blacksburg is going to be, right? It's not going to be Florida. I mean, look at the schedule. Every single game in the state of Florida except a trip to Dallas, the Metroplex, on November 1st. You'll be fine. And then we're taking our first trip against Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. We don't know what the weather is going to be. You get to come home. You get to miss Thanksgiving or at least take away from practice time having Thanksgiving. And you get your ass on a plane and go back up to Pitt. Narduzzi's going to eat you alive. No way. I wouldn't take it over on these guys.
We'll see if Pitt's healthy by then. That's going to be a big storyline for them. We'll get to Pitt in part 2. But let's move on to Louisville. Louisville, best you can find to win the conference, plus 850 is out there. ESPN bet. Win total, best you can find, over 8.5 minus 130. DK. I like this Louisville team this year. They lose Shuck to the NFL, but they bring in Miller Moss.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a good fit for this offense. I trust Braum with quarterbacks. They have one of the best running back duos in the country with Brown and Watson. They lose Brooks at receiver, but Lacey's back after redshirting. Bell's also back. They had some transfers. This team went transfer heavy again. That's like what they're doing. They've done it the last couple of years with success, but there's obviously a lot of variance in that. The offensive line is a concern. They lose everyone but their center. Niger's back there. He's good. The only guy they really will miss is Mills, who transferred to Virginia and then got hurt. He's out for the year. It's a big loss for them. But they could be starting 2 transfer tackles in camp right now. They're moving offensive linemen all around the center position, trying to figure out that group. So we'll see how the offensive line comes together. That's definitely a concern of mine.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a right tackle starting from Purdue. So defensively, lose a lot on the defensive line. Gelati is the big loss there. I like some of the guys they brought in, though. Like even Lowry from ODU, I like. Lubin from Coastal, I think, is super underrated. Bailey from Rutgers, I like when he's fully healthy. So I like some of the guys they brought in. Replacing Gelati is not going to be an easy task. Linebacker group, very, very solid. Secondary lost a lot. You lose your 4 starters, including your cornerback Riley and both your cornerbacks, Riley and Thornton, who both are on NFL rosters. That's the big question on defense for me. I like some of the guys they brought in. I like this kid Johnson, the corner from Southern, but it's Southern. How does he translate? I really like the kid Evans, the safety from FIU. But again, this is a step up. So they're relying on some lower level guys to step up here and replace some talent that went to the NFL. So biggest concern for me, the offensive line. But I trust Braum to figure out this offense. And I think Moss with this running game, they'll figure it out. It's all about the secondary coming together with these transfers on the back end. So I really like this Louisville team. Last year, they went 8-4 in the regular season, finished 9-4 overall. They had an improbable loss to Stanford. They easily could have beat Miami. They easily could have beat Notre Dame and SMU. They were right there. They were even with SMU. They led in the 4th versus Miami. They outgained Notre Dame by like 120 yards. This team was very... You play that ACC season over again a bunch. Louisville's in the ACC championship a fair amount. So definitely lost some key pieces. We'll see how they put together the offensive line in the secondary. But I like this Louisville team. I project like 8-9. So I'm not too far off market. But at plus 850, I think this might end up being the second best team in the ACC. I will be dabbling on Louisville, much to the chagrin of my Lexington folk around here. To win the ACC, I'm trusting in Braum. What are you saying with the Cardinals? And no, from a scheduling perspective, by the way, easy first 5 so they can figure some things out. Although at Pitt, they never play well at Pitt historically, this program. or whenever they play Pitt. But there's a good chance they start 5-0 before going to Miami, and they can figure out some of the things on the offensive line. And they have two early buys too before that Miami game, so they have a big runway here to figure some things out, which I do like. They host Clemson late in the year. They do go to SMU, which is a really tough spot, and they finish with Kentucky at home. At Vatech, maybe that's tricky. We'll see where Vatech is, but I don't mind the schedule. There's no real tricky spots that I'm worried about outside of that game at SMU, but they do play Miami, Clemson, and SMU, the three teams that we just covered, with two of them on the road. So that's certainly not easy, but I think this team's going to be right there when it's all said and done. What are you seeing with Louisville?
It's quite interesting because I think they are the second best team in the conference, but I don't slot them as finishing as the second best team in the conference because I hate that November 22nd spot more than anything. So, I mean, over 200 starts on the offensive line, that's number one in the nation.
Yeah, it's very versatile all the time. They have like 7 or 8 guys who've started at multiple positions.
Yeah.
So like in college, so they have a lot of flexibility. They just got to find the right pieces, but there's good depth if there's like injuries, but they just have to figure it out around Niagara.
Yeah, I have no concerns with this offense. Listen, Miller Moss coming in from USC, I think is a perfect fit. He just blew that LSU defense apart in that opener last year with 5 big time throws. I think he can return to that. I think Braum is going to be a better quarterback coach for him than what he had out at USC. Running back Duke Watson, 4.8 yards after first contact. That's an insane number. That is an insane amount of highlight yards. He forced 30 missed tackles and 69 rushing attempts. That's nearly 50% of every carry. I mean, that is electric. Colin Lacey coming back also, very large for this team. I have no questions on the offense. The edge in the secondary had to be backfilled from the portal. So I think that would tend to have me ask, can they repeat 43rd defensively in havoc, 13th in pass rush? Can you replicate those numbers having to dip into the portal? Their leading tackler, linebacker Stanquan Clark, returns. Renee Conga had 24 pressures from the interior. That is a lot of pressures from coming from a defensive interior player. So there are certain spots in the defense where they're returning elite players on an ACC level. But then there's some questions that have to fill out from the portal. They get a bye week before they travel to Miami. They have a terrible spot at SMU, like we've said. The game is sandwiched between Clemson and their rival Kentucky. And SMU, they play, will be off of a bye week. That's why I can't slot them second. But still, Stuck, I'll be honest with you, I make Louisville 10.2. And so I look at this schedule, and if they beat a couple of the brand names, I don't think Miami's a tough game, but it's a brand name game. If they're able to, I'm not saying pull off an upset against Clemson, but if their 2 losses are Clemson and SMU, and they finish 10-2, guess what? They're going to the playoff. They're not going to the ACC championship game, but they're going to go to the playoff. I mean,
maybe.
I think they can go to the playoff. I think they can absolutely miss the ACC championship game and go to the playoff. That's how crazy.
Other conferences. I mean, but if that happens, they have their only good win will be at Miami, and if Miami's way down, then the rest of their schedule is very bad. So I didn't
hear the committee bring up who did you play once last year.
Yeah, but SMU went 11-1. That's a little different. I mean, it could happen, but it's just going to depend on what happens in the SEC and the Big Ten. So you're looking at a playoff number?
No, I mean, I could be enticed on it, but it's definitely the bet here is over 8.5 minus 130. That's the bet. That's the wager. It's going in the app. That's the money that I have down already.
I'll be on the longer shot. And by the way, they're beating Clemson again. All right, let's move on to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, they're recruiting very well. Brent Key's doing a tremendous job. They're probably going to pull off an upset or two. Look out, Clemson. Week 3 at home. That's just what Key does. He's going to pull off upsets.
Do you have Clemson at 6-6 this year? I'm just trying to 9-3. Okay.
So, with Georgia Tech, Faulkner held on to Faulkner, offensive coordinator. It's massive. I think he's one of the 3 best in the sport. And they bring in a new defensive coordinator, Blake Gideon from Texas. He's got to fix this defense, mainly the pass defense. Probably going to see some more zone. They got some returning experience in that secondary, but they just have to be better. The run D was great last year, but they lose 7 of their top 8 defensive linemen. You got Vanderberg back, who's good, but the rest, they're going to need some transfers to hit. So we'll see how the defense comes together. A little worried in that department. Offensively, you got Haynes King back. You have a pretty good backup that they like, which is good insurance because King might get banged up. Uses his body a lot. Haynes is back at running back. You lose Singleton, which is huge. He went to Auburn. He did so much for them. You're hoping that Rivers, the FIU transfer, can really step up and help out Rutherford, who's back. I am a little concerned about the front line. Just they lose a bunch of tight ends that did so much for them, including Halls, who went to the NFL. But they lose their 2 best offensive linemen as well, and they lose another. They lose both tackles and a safety. Their guards are solid, but the rest has to come together. I trust Key to figure out the offensive line. That's his specialty, but it's certainly a question. So there's some questions on this team, but they're going to be feisty. It's all about Gideon fixing this defense in the back end. Because here's the thing. And Georgia Tech, if they figure out that offensive line, they're going to have that ball control offense. They're going to annoy teams. They're going to be in games against teams they shouldn't be. It is an easier than usual schedule. It's not easy, but it's like 42nd, even though they have Georgia on a neutral to close the year. They start at Colorado. They host Clemson. But their schedule overall is easier than it usually is for Georgia Tech. It usually has one of the toughest in the country. They only play one of the top 7 teams, and it's against Clemson at home early in the year. They avoid Miami. They avoid Louisville. They avoid SMU. They avoid Florida State. They avoid UNC. Their road games in conference, Duke, NC State, Wake, and BC, doesn't get any easier than that. I mean, unless you had like Stanford and Cal in there. So there's some things to like about the schedule. I've considered Georgia Tech's a long shot. The best you can find out there is 14-1. Best over win total, over 7.5 minus 150 is the best you could find out there. What are you seeing with the Rambling Wreck?
I want to love these guys. I mean, anyone that takes Georgia to 8 overtimes and gives them a hell of a game, you want to do that. But I mean, they're losing a lot. They're having a scheme change on the defensive side, and I think there's just some things that you can't ignore. The fact that Aaron Philo was pretty good in relief of Haynes King says that there can be an injury there and everything will be fine. Jamal Haynes returns, but they have 2 new offensive tackles. So there's a little bit of a question there. And Malachi Carney, who's coming in, he graded 326th of all tackles in PFF. That's not a good grade. So can Haynes King stay healthy? Can Jamal Haynes get some blocking off the edge? I don't know, because I'm a little nervous about what they're bringing in on the offensive line.
And it all starts with Georgia Tech on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Everything starts.
Yeah. And so, and they were 10th in pass blocking last year. Is that going to hold up? We'll see. I mean, I believe in Buster Faulkner. We're looking at top 35 numbers in quality and finishing drives. That's Buster Faulkner. But if you don't have tackles to protect and to run block, then it's going to change the dynamic. Scheme change coming in with Blake Gideon. They're going to go to a 4-2-5. 4 of the top 5 tacklers return. You're looking at a lot of transfers from Penn State, Miami, and USC to beef up and kind of refortify the defensive line to stop the run. That's what they want to do. But at the same time, when I look at their numbers, they were 123rd in tackling. That's got to get cleaned up. They were 126th in producing a pass rush. That's got to get flipped. They were 100th in allowing pass explosives. That's got to change. So there's a lot of things on this defense to shore up. So with a new scheme change, it's good that you have experience coming back, but how well do they grasp that when they go to play Colorado? That would be my hesitation against Colorado. So yeah, especially Colorado's defense going up against new tackles that don't grade out very well. All that being said, like, they're going to play at home just once in a 5-week span during the ACC. In the middle, what span is that? Yeah, so towards October 18th to like November 22nd-ish. They play once at home. I think 10 wins is their ceiling. I don't think they can pull it off against Clemson and Georgia. They're potential short road dogs. Duke, NC State. This Colorado game could be an upset up in elevation. I make them 5.8, and I like Georgia Tech.
5.8. I'm at 7.7.
Yeah, I'm under +1, under 7.5 plus 125. I don't like the scheme changes. I don't like the new offensive tackles. I think they lost too much from a wide receiver perspective. It's a lot of questions here.
You're crazy. All right, we don't agree again in the ACC.
No.
I think Georgia Tech's going to have a shot to get there. But what's probably going to happen is they're probably going to beat like Clemson, but then lose to someone they shouldn't. It's just like the nature
Yeah.
of the way that they play. But I trust Faulkner. I trust Haynes King. I trust Key to figure out the offensive line. And I think there's only upside with this defensive scheme change just because their secondary was so bad last year. They're going to be feisty, I'll tell you that. All right, let's move on to Florida State. Disastrous year last year, 2-10. Everything went to shit. What could have went wrong, went wrong. There was injuries, poor play, poor coaching. Just everything was bad. One of the bright spots was in the secondary, and they had a couple corners leave for the NFL, so you have to replace them. They do bring in Wilson from Houston, who I like. But this team, they're going transfer heavy again, and they have a really good transfer. Look, top 25 recruiting class and a top 10 portal class again. But they're going to need a lot of these guys in the portal that they brought in to hit. A lot of change here from Norvell. New offensive coordinator, Gus Malzahn. New quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, comes in from BC. I think it's a good fit. They were together before. Can he stay healthy? Can he throw the ball? That's a major question consistently. I mean, this is going to be a run-heavy offense.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of backs that have talent here. Look out for the freshman, Chroma. Can he be like the bell cow? Really talented kid. We'll see. The weapons on the outside, like they bring in Deuce Robinson and Squirrel Wright. They're okay. Maybe there's one of the freshmen can step up at wide receiver as well. I think the kid Boggs, he could be an option. And then the offensive line, it's rebuilt. No returning starters. You do get Leonard back from injury at right guard, but the rest are transfers. It's like Pettibone, Medley, Pettis, Hansen. I like a lot of them. Hansen, not a fan of the Vandy transfer. Like I said in the SEC pod that Vandy upgraded at left tackle when they got rid of Hansen and brought in another transfer. But it has to be better than last year. There's 129 career starts here, and they are very, very big. But this is like what's going to make or break the offense. Castellanos has to stay healthy, and they want to be a run-heavy team. Can this offensive line come together? Offense in general can't be worse than last year. So, and I think Castellanos is a big fit. I mean, Florida State, I upgraded them. They're probably the team I got to check, but I think the team I upgraded most from last year. Upgraded close to 2 touchdowns. But last year, I downgraded them close to 3 touchdowns. So, obviously, a very high variance team. On the defensive side, Tony White comes in, 3-3-5. New schemes on both sides. The team's going to look very different schematically. Bring in some Nebraska guys with him. It looks like this kid Rawls is going to start at corner. So we'll see. They have some talent back at safety. Transfer heavy just at a lot of different positions. We'll see if some of the young kids can step up. What are you seeing with Florida State?
Well, Gus Malzahn comes in to try to stabilize this offense, run a base. He is the inventor of the Wildcat per Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, which is now the RPO. We'll see if he's going to be able to pull that off as OC. Tommy Castellanos, pretty modest in his rushing attempts for BC. 104 designed yards. He had 183 yards on scrambles, but
that's the O'Brien offense.
But do we know if he can run? Like, do we know like if he can run Gus's offense? I'm not sure that's a fit. He gained just 6 yards total on zone read plays. I went in and looked. Like, I mean, I don't know if they were sneaks or if they were actually designed quarterback bootlegs or runs or whatever. But he gained just 6 yards on zone read plays last year. Is this Malzahn offense work for him?
I think so. I think he's a pretty good fit, but if he's got to stay healthy, and the offensive line has got to be good. I mean, it's a polar opposite fit. O'Brien never wanted Castellanos to be his quarterback because he wants a drop back guy, and which is why
tight. Yeah,
and Castellanos is not a consistent passer.
Well, Roydell Williams is going to be the running back here. He really does not flash when it comes to missed tackles.
It's got to be Chroma. I'm telling you, it's got to be that.
Yeah. Because Roydell had, like, in his best year at Alabama, his 4th year, his best year at Alabama, 3.4 yards after first contact with that kind of offensive line that he had in front of him, getting 112 carries. I'm not sure that he can do it. So I think you're right on that aspect. Tony White's coming in. He's got to improve almost every single ranking is outside the top 100. Contested catch rate, passing down success rate, explosives. Like, 4 of your top 6 tacklers return, but we have got to improve in so many areas. Tony White has the pedigree, or at least has proved it at our previous stop that he can do that. Now, you mentioned a new corner on one side, but the other corner, Jeremiah Wilson, provided plenty of PBUs and great coverage grades at his stops at Houston and Syracuse. So I think for Florida State, from a positive, you have one corner that's going to be able to shut some wide receiver options down by opposing.
Yeah, it's the other corner spots that are my question. Because there's three corners last year, including the nickel, that are now on NFL rosters. I mean, it looks like Little's going to take over the nickel, Joseph at safety, and then maybe this kid Rawls he's going to start with Wilson at corner, but we'll see. I mean, Brown and Joseph maybe at safety. So the secondary definitely has some questions. The linebacker transfers are decent. You bring in Thompson, who's familiar with this. Thompson and Williams come from Nebraska with Tony White. Defensive tackle still a bit of a question for me, but we'll see if Tony White zone heavy 3-3-5.
Yep.
He brings a few assistants with him as well. We'll see if he can get this fixed.
Yeah, I mean, and look, your schedule, Miami's going to get a bye week before they come to Tallahassee, and Virginia Tech's going to get a bye week before they come to Tallahassee. And FSU's got to travel on November 8th to Clemson. So it's not really a schedule. And what's the health? What is you got to go to the Swamp in the rivalry game at the end of the year. So, how
Where
bad
are they at mentally? Because look, they start with Alabama, probably lose that game. Although it's week one. If they were going to beat Alabama, that's when you want to get them at home week one. But let's just say they lose that game. If things go right, and White has this offense going, Gus has this offense going, White has this defense figured out. They have a nice runway to stack wins. You don't love Miami, but that's going to be the hardest game over a stretch of 7 games.
Mm-hmm.
East Texas A&M, Kent State, at Virginia, Miami, Pitt at home, at Stanford, Wake at home. So there's a chance that things are going well. They're 7-1, headed to Clemson. Now, if you lose that at Virginia game, that's the key, I think, to their season. That at Virginia, then Miami at home. If you lose that, and then you're sitting at 4-3 going to Clemson, because the Final Four are brutal. So if you already have 3 or 4 losses, does the team quit again? I don't know, because the Final Four are at Clemson, Vatech, at NC State, at Florida. Not easy. I think their season is made or broken in that at Virginia, Miami stretch.
Right. So
2-0, they're going to have life. Do they go 0-2? I think they're cooked.
So I think the play for me, because I barely get the win total to 6, I'm going under 6.5 plus 125. And then I'm probably going to bet Florida State as an underdog at home against Miami. And then I've got 2+ money plays, and I think it all comes down. I think if they win that game, your win total might be cooked. If they don't, then you're probably going to cash your win total, but you can get both at plus money. So I think that's the way you play it. Under 6.5 plus 125 for me. I'm probably going to be combining that with a Florida State money line play on October 4th, and maybe you cash both.
Yeah, I'm at 7.11, so I actually have a small lean to the over, but this could all fall apart.
They could lose their last 4 games easy. And where is the player development? Where is the player retention? Have you seen Florida State get better as seasons go on? I know there was injuries a couple years ago, but those are just questions for me when I want to take a win total over on a team.
Big year for Norvell. Can't have another disaster. I mean, they were 1-3 in one possession games. They were -16 in turnovers. Their schedule gets a little easier. They have some talent on this roster. Can they put it all together? I'm a little more optimistic on Florida State than I was last year because obviously I hated DJ. All right, let's move on to Virginia Tech. Here's a team that, by the way, did you see Virginia Tech what did I tell you? Virginia Tech get hammered against South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to win that game. Virginia Tech, another volatile situation from a coaching perspective with Brent Pry. Is he going to make it through the year? Is he going to be here next year? He's got to do something good here. There are a lot of hype last year. A lot of people thought they were going to win 10 games. Well, they finished 6-7. They did go 0-5 in one possession games. They were tied or ahead at the 2-minute warning in 4 of their losses. And maybe that's a trend because Pry is 1-12 in one possession games.
Yep.
Is that an indictment on coaching?
That is Chuck Martin, Miami of Ohio-ish. You're getting there.
I like what they did in the offseason. A lot of people don't. I'm in the minority there. I love, I should say, their defensive coordinator hire, Cephas. He was with two really, really respected defensive rooms in the NFL. He's going to bring, this is why I really like them week one, some really exotic 3-high safety looks. They lost a ton. I mean, let's just put it out there. This team got absolutely gutted. But, they were bad all across the board. Drones is back. You hope that he's healthy. He was dealing with injuries last year. They bring in Philip Montgomery, the offensive coordinator, usually good with quarterbacks. You lose Tootin and Lane, your top receiver and wide receiver, to the NFL. The offensive line, everyone is gone. But you bring in a new offensive line coach. Some guys from West Virginia come with him. He was the West Virginia offensive line coach. 57 of the 60 starts, by the way, from last year are gone on the offensive line. You get some guys back from injury, and you bring in some other guys. You're going to have to figure out the offensive line. But I think that there's some pieces here. I think that there's the skill positions. You're going to have Stewart at running back, who I like. So there's some pieces to work with if the offensive line can come together. Defensively, you do lose a lot as well. But the defense was really disappointing. Linebackers and safeties in particular. But, you lost your two best defensive linemen to the NFL. You lost some defensive backs to the NFL in Power 4. But I like some of the guys they brought in. I like this kid Reddish, this young kid. But I really like the corner Brown they brought in. I really like Flowers, the safety from Rice. I really like Ellis from New Mexico. Now, these are lower-level guys, but these are guys that I really liked, and they added. So I think they did a really good job in the portal. You do have your top two tacklers back at linebacker at least. Even guys like Bell and Jonkham from Eastern Michigan and Texas State, I like at the defensive end spot. So I like what they did in the portal. I like their coaching hires. This is kind of like the post-hype buy of Virginia Tech. I haven't heard anyone really say anything positive about them, but I project them around 7. You can get over 6.5 plus 130 or over 6 minus 140. So this is probably my favorite over in the ACC from a win total, just value perspective. Now, it could all go south because, the prize situation, there's a lot of moving pieces, new coaches, new schemes. There's a lot of variance here. 60-1, best number you'll find to win the ACC. I lean over on a team from a scheduling perspective. It's, I would say, middle of the road. It's not too difficult. Their ACC road games: Georgia Tech, Florida State, Virginia, NC State. Again, what are Florida State and Virginia going to be? That'll dictate a lot of that. They only have 4 true road games. They had 6 last year. Start off the season with South Carolina in Atlanta. I think they pull off the upset. So, I like the over. But I really like this guy, Cephas. And safeties are really important. I like this safety room. I know they lost a lot, but I think they're going to surprise some teams. What are you seeing with the Hokies? Are you low on them? I assume so. We're different on everything in the ACC.
No, I'm actually 6.7. I just haven't made a play on the over 6.5 plus money. That's the way that I would roll. You could do that, or you can take a money line in week 1, which I'm getting warmer and warmer to after our SEC podcast. If you haven't listened to our take on South Carolina, I do like bringing in Philip Montgomery as your OC to come in and be the quarterback coach for Kyron.
I didn't like their OC last year. I didn't like his play calling, so I think
their numbers sucked. I mean, 121st in havoc allowed. Philip Montgomery's got to come in and settle Kyron Jones down. He can do that. He had extreme success as the quarterback coach at Houston in the 2000s. Extreme success with Robert Griffin III. Tulsa head coach for 7-8 years. Birmingham Stallions last year. I didn't get into their quarterback stats to get ready for the pod, but Phil Montgomery has a proven track record here. I think that is going to be vital for Drones to take a step, which he just fails to do each year. He did not.
Jonathan Green, by the way, you got to stay healthy. I love him, the Wake receiver. He's always has a groin injury though, but if he can be the one, you get this kid Selden from Tennessee who's transitioning. He's a lot of talent. They're going to use him in a lot of different ways.
Terrion Stewart brings in 900 plus yards and a 4.1 yards after first contact, so he can create highlight yards. But we have some offensive line depth issues. We have a lot of new faces on the offensive line. So that would be the pause that I have against South Carolina. But then again, South Carolina is missing a bunch of guys on their defensive line that have moved on as well. From a defensive perspective, you're right about bringing in an NFL DC. It's still going to be their head coach is still going to be Price defense, but it's going to have a flavor now of more pro style, probably blitzes and schemes. So I think it will help, but there is inexperience at the corner position, and the portal filled 2 safeties on the depth chart. So it's like I want to hop on this South Carolina. I mean, there's a new offensive line for South Carolina also, so you would think Virginia Tech could do some damage there. From a scheduling perspective, 4 ACC road games are NC State, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Virginia. So it's not a large load. The schedule is 55th in the nation. It's manageable. I lean a little bit over. It's plus money, and I make it 6.7, so I would go over 6.5. I just haven't fired, and I might just take a money line against South Carolina.
Brown Murray, their nickel from ECU, I like. But it's all. But this offensive line just has to come together. They're Matt Moore. Shout out Matt Moore from Action Network, but also Matt Moore, their West Virginia offensive line coach, came over to Vatech. Might be like a redshirt freshman from West Virginia starting at center. Like that's Rymack's going to be good at right tackle. That's pretty much like the only he comes from West Virginia. That's the only position that's really settled. So we'll see. But I'm on the Hokies bandwagon this year. Was off them last year when they were getting all the hype. This is the post hype buy. All right, let's finish up this episode with Duke. Duke, tremendous season last year in the first under Manny Diaz. It was a bit lucky. I mean, let's just call it what it was. It was a great year for Diaz, but this is a team last year that won 7 of the 8 coin flips it had. The one coin flip loss was against SMU when they won the turnover battle 6-0 and lost. But like you look last year, they beat their 8 FBS wins. Those teams went 39-57. If you compare schedule to schedule, so take the 8 teams like that are comparable this year, they're projected to go 53-43. The schedule is going to get harder. They only beat one team that finished with a winning record last year. That was UConn. This year, they're expected to play 7 teams with a winning record. That doesn't even include games at Cal and at Cuse, who aren't projected to go 6+. But last year, they even caught all the teams at the right time, like with quarterbacks. Like they played Vatech when Watson was starting, and they were basically checked out and injured. They played Northwestern with the wrong, and you know that Northwestern game, that 2 overtime luck box. You know, UConn, they trailed in the 4th against Northwestern. They trailed in the 4th. UNC, they trailed 20-0, won 21-20. Florida State, how bad they were. 4-0 turnovers. They were outgained 300-180. Like they should have lost that game. Wake, how bad was Wake last year? Well, they trailed 17-3. They won on a walk-off Hail Mary. Game flipped on a kickoff return fumble. An NC State game was even statistically. Vatech game was even statistically. And all these teams were like had their disaster years. So they definitely benefited from the schedule. It will get harder this year. But they upgraded a quarterback. They won last year despite their quarterback play. Murphy was not good. They bring in Mensa from Tulane. He's more mobile as well. The offensive line, you got to remember in the spring it was a mess. So there's a lot to like about this team this year. Returning production around 50th, but you got Moore's got to stay healthy at running back. I feel like he's always hurt, and you do lose your top 2 at receiver. So a little worried about the weapons on the outside. They don't wow me. But the offensive line, I think, will be okay this year. The defense last year led the ACC in tackles for loss, sacks. Shouldn't surprise anyone under Manny Diaz. The secondary has 2 outstanding players. Chandler Rivers, future pro, lockdown corner. And then Moore, their safety, future pro, I would say one of the 5 best safeties in college. The thing is, he got hurt on the final play, got hurt in the bowl game. They don't think he's going to be available. I don't know when he's going to come back. For the first part of the year is all that's said. So their other corner they lost to the NFL. If they don't have Moore back there, their secondary is probably going to take a step back. They're going to need Weaver to step up, who I do like from Sam Houston State. And then Robinson's got to step up at that other corner spot. But you trust Manny Diaz and this defense. We'll see if he can figure out the linebacker position because they do lose their top 3 there. So there's a lot of things pointing in the down direction for Duke, like 6-1 one-possession games. The schedule broke their way, +8 in turnovers. Looking at the schedule, It's a tricky non-con because you're going to UConn, you're going to Tulane, you host Illinois. So like there's 3 potential losses of your 4 non-con games. ACC road games, Clemson, Cuse, UNC, and Cal. So mixed bag there. They do have weird bye weeks. Like they're surrounded around the Georgia Tech game. I don't know. I want to go under really bad on Duke. They're 35 to 1's the best number you'll find to win the ACC. Over 6.5, minus 160. You could find over 6.5, like minus 200. It's starting to get expensive. The thing is, I project them around like 7-1. So I can. I was all ready to sell them. I was hoping I would go like under 7.5. Maybe it'll get there. I think they're starting to take some money here. Maybe. So I'm wanting to sell this team. My numbers say I can't. Maybe we'll see some more tempo. I think we expect to see some more tempo on offense this year. What are you seeing with this Duke team? Really interesting case study.
Love Duke. 7.7 is the total that I make it. Darian Mensah coming in from Tulane shows me that Duke has money and they're willing to spend it. When you add Malik Murphy already in pocket, you're like, no, we're going to upgrade.
And they got the backing now. This is a program on the rise. Top 30 recruiting class too. Burning their highest signer ever.
You know, there was a version of this podcast before the pandemic where we took second order win totals, net turnovers, just market indicators pointing up and down what we did in our preseason work. But now it's like, are you spending money? Do you have a collective? Can you, right? I'm not sure which one's more important these days, but it's something that you have to take into consideration. So Darian Mensah comes in, more big time throws and turnover worthy plays, a 22-6 TD to INT for Tulane, 11.3 ADOT. He can throw it deep. He can run. Nearly 250 yards of his rushing came on scrambles. Kid can move. 4 offensive linemen return. That's a good thing, but they were 132nd in line yards. They really weren't making a lot of lanes for the running game. That's got to improve. They were 131st in rushing success rate. That's got to improve.
He could not run block at all. That's where Mensah can help being a little bit more mobile at the quarterback position.
Yep.
At least.
True, because Malik Murphy is not that guy. Wide receiver Andrell Anthony comes in from OU. Everybody at OU was hurt last year, so we really have to look at his 2023 numbers where he went 2.8 yards per route run for the Sooners. That is an insane number, and that gives Mensah a quick hitter boomer on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, really no worries. I don't expect any drop-off from a team that finished 7th in coverage, finished 3rd in defensive havoc on the season. It really played a big part in those close games. The player to call out is corner Chandler Rivers. Not only 6 PBUs and 3 INTs, but he had 6.5 tackles for loss. How in the world does a corner have 6.5 tackles for loss? I mean, we're just sticking people in the flats when they get the ball. I mean, that's an impressive number for a corner, unless he's like safety blitzing that, or I'm sorry, if he's corner blitzing that much. And like I said, Duke finished 3rd in havoc, and that's a big part of it. This is a very well schemed and a very well executed defense. Mensah travels to Tulane on September 13th. I originally looked at that in the schedule, like it's in between Illinois and NC State. And I thought, well, why would Duke want to go to New Orleans? Well, now you got their quarterback. So it probably means a lot to their quarterback, which means it probably means a lot to the offense. Back-to-back travel in a dome in Syracuse and then out to Berkeley. So there is some air miles that they're going to be putting on here, especially going out. I'd watch the game time out there out west, see how late that's going to be. I know Auburn went out there and it was kind of funky last year, and I would pay attention to Duke on that. Just 2 games in October. That is interesting schedule where they have back-to-back buys on November 18th and November 1st. They're coming off bye weeks, and they get them for Georgia Tech and Clemson. So to me, that is a positive. You essentially get all these smart kids at Duke off the entire month of October for their midterms, and they only play 2 games in the month of October. They should be fresh for the final stretch. So I like the over. I'm at 7.7. I'm over 6.5 minus 160. I'd rather do an alt line at 7 to make it a little bit cheaper. So I'm going to look around, but I'm definitely in the boat of over on Duke.
Yeah, I agree with you. Program on the rise. They got the first ever top 100 guys, best high school recruiting class ever. But again, I couldn't be. I want to sell this team. No thanks on the over. You got to remember last year they had 3 pros in the secondary, and then they also lost 270 tackles in the linebacker room. That enables Diaz to do so much. Well, one of those corners is off to the NFL, and you're Moore, who I think is a top 3 safety in college football. He's not going to be available for I don't know how long. I don't know if he's going to be healthy at all for this year. So now you're down to 1 pro in Rivers, who's really good. He's going to lock down one side of the field. But if that back 7 gets worse off from a coverage standpoint, Diaz can't do as much, and he can't create as much havoc. So, and look, last year the quarterbacks they faced were an absolute joke. And they faced so many backups, hurt quarterbacks. So I think that inflated their numbers a bit. But the thing is, the reason I'm there, I'm lower in the market than Duke, but like I'm also lower in the market on Illinois, Tulane, UConn, Clemson, Virginia, Wake. So like all these teams that Cuse, which we'll get to, Cal. So these are all the teams they play. All these teams that I'm also lower than the market. So they're not playing. I wish they were playing Louisville, and so I don't know. A lot of it's going to depend also on where is Virginia, UNC, and Wake Forest. Their last 3 games. Where are they mentally? Like Virginia could have a fired coach by then. UNC are they a mess or are they peaking? We'll get to them in part 2. Wake Forest, new coach, new situation. Where are they? So that'll go a long way as well. There's final 3 games of the season. But numbers, I want to sell this team. I'm hoping the line keeps going up. So, all right, that'll wrap up part 1. I think it makes for the best podcast. I love when we disagree. I think we disagreed on every team. Clemson, you love, I don't.
Yep.
I mean, I love Clemson. What do I have them? I have them power rated 7th. It's not like I think they're bad, but Clemson, you love. I don't love as much. Miami, you hate.
Yeah.
Neutral. Louisville, I love. You can't get over the SMU game. SMU, yep. I want to sell. You want to buy.
Yep.
Georgia Tech, I want to buy. You want to sell.
Yep.
Virginia Tech, I love. You're kind of there. That's maybe the team that you can kind of see my vision. Florida State, you want to sell.
Yep.
I'm thinking about buying. Duke, you want to buy. I want to sell.
The whole board is just the ACC, right?
Yeah, we might have to cross on some of these. So, all right, that'll do it for part 1. We'll be back in part 2. We'll finish with the final 9 teams in the ACC and Notre Dame. But thanks to Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, in the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. You know the deal. Leave a 5-star review. Really helps us out this time of the year. We'll see you for part 2. Cheers.
Peace out.